want to thank deeply Vera for her lovely speech. If you want, you can open your eyes. Because I'm convinced that all of us have experienced or are experiencing moments of crisis. And the word crisis comes from ancient Greek and means the possibility of a change, of a decision, of an opening. In my experience, the way in which our spiritual journey becomes real is through what we call the difficulties of our life. Often we go in a spiritual journey because we felt pushed by a crisis. And initially, we search for a cure for that crisis. And we search for words, for videos, for people, seminar, gurus, that could heal that wound, that yearning, and quench that thirst, because we want to run away from that fire. And we go along, and sometimes we feel that we are again safe and secure. And then after a while, we discover that that fire is still there. And once more. And we feel really lucky. We finish the places to run to. And we die. And the death, the spiritual death, is burning in that fire of fear that is actually the fire of love. And is going to take all of you. And all your hopes, all your desires. And at the end of it, you're going to see a true peace that is beyond that positive and negative, beyond anything, beyond darkness and light. There is you. And this is what you're looking for. That's why you're burning inside, even if sometimes we cover that burning with a lot of words and concepts. And it's okay for a while, you know, to hold on to them, because we need a bit of comfort. Sometimes I think that meeting God, and when I say the word God, I'm not meaning, of course, something outside of us, but our true self, is a bit when you go to the first appointment, the first date, you know? Like you're in love with your beloved and you're all excited. And mentally you think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I will look good, I will say this stuff. And then you go there and you forget everything. And you're trembling. And you're moved and you're scared. And then you're taken. So my invitation to people is not to be afraid of that fear and of that crisis, because that crisis is the true possibility of an authentic opening and awakening. This is my invitation. So thank you, Vera, for your courage and your honesty and your humbleness, because behind your words there was all this deep longing to be sacrificed in the fire of love. And we all felt it, so thank you again. Thank you.
I don't know that I have anything to say right now, but I thank you all for being here. You're some of the most, I heard about your dance. I saw you for a few minutes the first day, and I was so moved by you, and then I missed your performance, and I'm so sorry. It's legendary. And it's such a holy trinity here. So I don't really even, I can't, but I trust that this can have a flow of its own. So I invite you to share whatever is speaking through you and from you. And I'm just going to give this back to you.
Nothing's coming through at the moment, except maybe you said the word, did you say the word sacrifice? Yeah. And I like that word, but I think in my, how to put this? To me, it's a word that can feel very intense and very exotic and very out of reach. But actually, in my experience and in what I like to share with people, sacrifice is very ordinary. And it's simply, and it's to do with the body in my exploration, because the body is really obviously the place where the so-called feminine lives. And kind of the underneath level of the waking state, the felt experience, the sensations, the energy. And the sacrifice, to me, is the simple activity or ritual, we could call it, of surrendering the body to whatever we like to call it, whether it is presence or consciousness or goddess, but really what we mean is surrendering the body moment by moment to the present moment, which is in a way Shiva. We're surrendering Shakti to Shiva, but it's so ordinary. We can do it with the sensation of our breath, the tingling at our fingertips, and of course also the deeper layers of feelings. And I think I want to say this because sometimes when we speak of the feminine, it becomes this very exotic, conceptual even, although Vera is hardly conceptual in her offering, but it can feel out of reach, and it isn't. It's our most ordinary experience, except that we live in a culture that has, unfortunately, maybe, just slightly severed that connection, but it's right there, it's right here.
I have a question for you, because I first of all, what you said, really thank you for recognizing that. That's exactly, my heart, that's my heart. And I mean, I feel like there's this aspect of the ego, which is its function, and of the personality, which is like, I'll speak about myself. I will not willingly surrender anything. Like, it feels like the mother has to take it out of my cold, dead hands. There's this way in which I'm just beginning to make these movements, of leaning in. So is there a way to learn that movement? Is that something that just necessarily happens after having been burned up, where you have no more resistance? It just seems to be something that we can't functionally almost, well, maybe we can, so. And in an embodied way, You
want to say? No, you go ahead. Yes. Oh, you first.
I'll go. There are so many things I can relate to from the first day, from things which happened, or lectures or workshops, and so many things that I heard right now that started connecting things in my mind. And one thing you're saying now is, those two things, the sacrifice and the relation with the body, the embodiment, it takes me to what we were exploring yesterday during the workshop, was exactly somehow this. But the name was not sacrifice, was offering. And we started with trying to feel, first of all, what is dance, and try to not relate dance to the cloth, So we started with this because I was very amazed by the fact that most of the people, they were not recognizing me. They say, oh, you are the same, the one dancing with the beautiful dress, hairstyles, and all. So you really transformed yourself. And most of us, we relate the transformation to something exterior, to a cloth, to a bindi, to some kind of magic which is outside, but real transformation for me is through dance, which is the knowledge of the embodiment. And dance we learn every day, every single instant. It's a knowledge of being aware what's happening at each and every second in each and every part of our body. And every time is something different. Every time we discover darkness in some places. And yesterday I was inviting the participants in the workshop just to offer whatever was there. Whatever. Whatever means you don't have to. So many times we just think, oh, we should offer only the good things. But dance is offering. That's all. We can offer our sadness. Yesterday somebody was bringing the workshop, we were making this kind of game like, okay, we place ourselves in the center, we become a center. And so everyone was feeling which kind of center we are. So I'm the center of love, I'm the center of happiness, I'm the center of the world. And somebody was saying, I'm the center of tears. Wow. And for me that's so beautiful because in a way, when I was a child, I was very shy. So my sister was the first witness of me dancing because I was dancing close in the room and nobody should see me. And she was the first one to tell to the parents, she's dancing all the time, so please put her in some school because, but I was not really aware of what is happening in the room. But later on I realized that this was the way for me to express my sorrows. This was the way for me to have a language which was able to speak about everything, the joy, the sorrows, the craziness, the knowledge, everything. And yeah, and it's funny because the name of the association I founded, it's called NAD. It's very difficult to translate. In Italian, it's nascere alla danza. And somebody say, oh, born to dance. And I say, no, not to dance, true dance. Which means that each and every second we have to learn how to be born again. And we have to accept that we don't know who we are. We don't know. I don't know.
Thank you, Antonella. The thing is, what is running your spiritual life? It's not who you believe to be. And as long as you are trapped in the illusion of the personality, it seems you have to surrender yourself to something unknown, mysterious, threatening, and you are afraid because you don't know where your next step will land. So there is nothing that what you believe to be can do. And that is the deepest despair of spiritual journey. But when you're taken, when you're falling, arrives a moment in which you see that you're flying. And that bottomless fall is actually opening to your true self. And I cannot explain you with words how it happens. I can only be it now with you. And maybe you feel it. what you really are, what we really are, is this openness. And to the false identity, this openness is threatening because it has no boundaries, it has no rules, it has no limitations at all. So the breaking of that false identity, of that contraction in which we just believe to be trapped in, it's for the one that we believe to be death. That's the crisis. But for what you really are, it's simply falling in love. When you're falling, my love, actually, you are falling in love, in the love. That is not a feeling, is not an emotion, is emptiness. When we are opening to that love, true love, unconditional love, sometimes you are willing to let go of that limitations, of that sense of separation, and then you feel expanding and you feel radiance because you're willing to let go. And sometimes you don't want to let go, and then you feel fear.
That's where I was.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because your resistance will not prevent it to happen. So relax. and what I wanted to try to put across is that that resistance, that fear, and the falling in love and the feeling in love is the same energy. Okay? Just that in one case is resisted and in one case is not. But you have no chance. You're taken. You know, if you are in a place like this now, listening to this, it's because this opening is happening in your life. Not because of these words or the people you meet that are just pointers in your direction. But it's happening. That's why you're here. So it's already happening. You are already opening. And sometimes you say yes, and sometimes you say no. And it doesn't matter. And yes, the world is in crisis. Totally. Like on any point of view, as you beautifully said, like religiously, ecologically, socially, individually, because we are breaking this limitation. And yes, we can learn to be courageous, to have a fear, because only courageous people have a fear. When you try not to have a fear, you're crazy. Okay? So please be courageous and feel this fear. And you will discover that is the flame of love opening you up.
So I love what you're saying, because you're not saying don't be afraid. You're saying fear is what is, and it's important and then maybe even powerful, that there's a power, a Shakti in fear if we allow ourselves to feel it, really feel it, right? Yeah.
You don't need to be afraid of fear. Fear is the force of your opening to your true self. That's it. You can feel it, you can welcome it, you can even witness it. And maybe at the beginning it's hard.
No, sorry.
Maybe at the beginning it's hard, and you find yourself running again and again away from situation that you don't want to touch. You don't want to be seen by people vulnerable or frail, and you are afraid of your vulnerability. But actually that vulnerability is what the mind calls your openness. The mind calls your openness vulnerability. Rarely we are daring to be vulnerable and frail. But that's the key. So the mind needs to have reassurance, and it's okay. But then arrives a time in which your spiritual journey must go deeper. And you have to face your shadows and discover they're just shadows. And the light of awareness enlighten them. And exactly in the same way in which the sunlight, when touches shadows, the shadows disappear, they disappear. It doesn't mean that the game of duality doesn't carry on. It carries on because that's life. But you're no more afraid of it. And that, to me, is liberation.
Again, I think I want to say that something about facing fear or facing resistance. Again, what does that really mean? Right this moment. I mean, a fear or resistance is still a concept or an idea. But if I'm sitting quietly, welcoming my experience moment by moment, fear at first presents itself as a sensation, a feeling with a story attached to it. But to really welcome fear requires something, courage, as we've been talking about, and perhaps also a pre-existing understanding or openness to our true nature. So there's nothing wrong with exploring our true nature with the mind, so that then when you go a little bit more to the raw experience, you're equipped. You don't go into the forest without something, a torch of some sort. So to approach this more irrational exploration of our experience, as best equipped as we can, whatever each one of our journey provides, and then to face a resistance, a fear. What does that mean? Okay, there's a story. I'm afraid. X, Y, Z, whatever the story. How do I face that? Do I face the story? Do I face the feeling? In my understanding, you kind of have to kind of compartmentalize a little bit. You have to postpone the story and go into the raw feeling. And that takes time. You have to be ready to postpone the story. So then you're ready. You postpone the story. Then what? What does it mean to face a fear? I mean, it's impossible to describe that. You have to do it. You know it when you do it, and a fear is a felt experience. It's alive, and what is that made out of? What could anything be made out of other than whatever we want to call it? So
Shakti. We want to call it Shakti.
Okay, we call it Shakti. But so it's as we truly welcome fear, it reveals itself to be life herself, slowly in her own time purifying herself of that egoic, I don't know what to call it, egoic veil, and that can take the time it takes, and we do it over and over again. And I recommend doing it a lot in the moments where there isn't so much fear, when you're home, when you're nice and safe and warm, and you just get on your yoga mats or you sit on your bed and you just stop engaging with whatever it is we engage with, and you go down there. I mean, that it's here. It's not, and that's it.
Beautiful. So in the sense in which we can begin to feel our fears when we're not in life-threatening situations. So we can create this kind of a safe container for ourselves where we can experience. This is somewhat what you're inviting, yes. Right? Like that it doesn't have to only be in these uncontrollable situations, that we can slowly somehow have a gentle.
Because if we do it in moments of peace, then when life lives. When you were standing there, you just lend your body mind to whatever comes through, and it's beautiful. And even though I can see that for you, after the fact you might cry, or there's a kind of reverberation, right? But you've been doing your work. You've been just lending your body mind to this, and the more we do it, it's like a ritual. That it's like we just tune our instruments. And maybe men do it differently than women. I have no idea. I don't really know exactly, but I kind of know because I'm more drawn to doing it this way, and Rupert obviously is drawn to it that way. But to do it I think that's what ritual is a kind of practice. Oh. It's a kind of practice.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I mean, that's
creating safe rituals for ourselves where we surrender.
Yes.
Where we lean in to whatever the moment is opening up to us.
Yes, maybe.
It's beautiful. Where this touches me is this week I had a beautiful conversation with my friend. Please remind me your name. Cynthia. And we talked about grace. And it just seems like so much of this is in the territory of grace somehow, right? Like, yes, there is an intentionality and a willingness that we can have and the skillful means so often that are so necessary in the healing process and in the awakening process that I know so little about, really. But there's so many things we must do and make decisions and, like, you're right, make commitments. And then sometimes it's just like grace. And because in Cynthia's work, she works in gender reconciliation. So her and Will, who's a speaker here, they go to places around the world where, like to India and to South Africa, where the gender violence is just extraordinary, and they hold space for reconciliation. And I mean, my question, I think, to Cynthia was like, what do you do with that? How can healing arise from those places? I mean, just unspeakable kind of real suffering experiences. Like, we can talk about things a little bit, out there, but then, I love what you said, like that, the importance of grace and how you surrender as facilitators so deeply to be able to receive, and that trust that is required, that trust and that is required to receive the grace that's already there. I guess I just wonder what role you feel grace has in these processes.
I think what we believe is that one day, grace will ring our bell. But grace is the crisis, okay? The action of the grace is already happening, and it's freeing you up from the illusion to be separated. So what is the end of the world for the ego is actually the butterfly for what you really are. So that's why it is beautiful, and please see if you can. I see the beauty of it. The beautiful compassion of life. The dilemma, the plight of the ego. It fears the most what it desires the most. It fears liberation, and it desires liberation. So I totally agree with Ellen, and thank you to brought up this, that you said about stories and feelings, because that's really the key, okay? I would like just, you said it all, but I wanted just to say a thing. The reason why that energy becomes Kali, okay, and is angry and raging, is because usually we pushed our feelings down. Mm-hmm. We don't want to feel them. We are trained not to cry, not to show to be emotional, even to ourselves. If we are able to learn not to be afraid of that feeling, not to be afraid of our feminine side, and it doesn't matter if we are women or men, it has nothing to do with sex, okay? If we learn this, then the Shakti becomes more gentle. Then the process is more gentle. And sometimes it's hard, because there are things that we really don't want to let go. And my invitation is, be kind with yourself. And then be kind with yourself. And then again, be kind with yourself. Be kind with your reactions. Be kind with your walls and fortress of the ego that doesn't want to let go. Don't go there with the tank and try to put them down. You put that fortress there for a reason, because it was too much for you. Okay? So don't feel guilty if once again you felt reactive and you acted the same for 1 billion times the same story and the same thing. That closing is there because it was too much for you. So it's a protection. Thank that protection. And then you see it will open by itself. And that to me that sitting with things is the essence of meditation. And I know the tradition you're coming from, I know it very well, I appreciate it deeply. And this sitting with the feelings, putting aside the stories of the mind that are just a way not to feel, that's the key. And usually we learn this with trials and error. Some, you know, like a scar on your knees and on your face. But it's not a war. It's an adventure. Enjoy the journey as it comes. It's a discovery of you. Thank you.
Your question was regarding grace, and again, I was relating this to something was happening yesterday in the workshop, during the workshop, and I'm trying to connect this also to the, what Caterina is saying just now, and I relate, of course, to my experience. So when you say it's not a war, I say, yeah, I should remember it's not a war, but sometimes for me, the perception is like there is a war inside myself between different parts, different things, and to not to resist for me is just to say there's a war.
To acknowledge what's going on.
Yeah, so, and I remember in 2002, I was in India at Darpan Academy in Gujarat, and I was there during the riots. And even today, when I talk to my Indian friends and say, I was there during the civil war, they say, there was never a civil war in India. I say, I was there, 2002, the riots between Hindu and Muslim. This was a civil war. And they don't say it. They keep talking, yeah, but Hindu are better, Muslim are this and that, but they don't say there is or there was a war. And for me, it's what so many times, I mean, it's even for me, like I pretend to be in peace, but there is a war going on. And so recently we did a conference. The theme was the dancer and the warrior, and we were trying to connect these two it seems to be very far away concept, very far away archetype, but in fact it's not that far away. And to find the grace, maybe we need courage, and sometimes we need to discover the warrior. So and sometimes, I mean, for me, it's always an experiment of balancing the energies. And sometimes I do relate this in terms of style, which in dance it's a language. So it's try to figure out how is evolving my language, or how is getting more refined my language, my body language. And it has always been a dialogue between these two different energies, which are feminine and masculine. And actually, the dance style I'm graduated in, Bharatanatyam, is the most androgyne style in Indian classical dance, where you are both, you are feminine and masculine. There are other styles in Indian dance where the feminine aspect is much more enlightened. And some people, they relate to Bharatanatyam and say, oh, this is a warrior dance. And they say, no, it all depends how you dance in that particular moment. So there are certain dancers who are more masculine, certain other, the style is the same, the language is the same, but it's the relationship about these two aspects who are making a difference. And dance somehow is a quest for grace. So and each one has to learn how to balance these two energies and to be graceful. But there's a big difference in being superficially graceful with the clothes, with this, or to find the grace inside, it's a long journey, and sometimes, oh, here there is grace. Sometimes it's just trying to figure out, okay.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
So I'm going to throw you off in another direction maybe, but if other people have questions, I want to bring you back to this, that's fine. I read a book earlier this year called A Brief History of Misogyny by James Holland, I believe. He's an Irish essayist. And the conclusion of the book was that misogyny actually is derived from the fall of man myth, which is the dualism myth in Western cultures. And so that was sort of my takeaway, was like, if we can get to a new creation story that's not dualism, that actually maybe misogyny and then every other discrimination that has come after will dissolve. So I was just wondering if you could talk about non-dualism and misogyny and your experience with that.
I want to say something about it just briefly. I don't know anything about the non-dual aspect of that, because I feel like I get very lost in the duality, actually. It would be really helpful to hear about the non-dual aspect. But I just want to say this is such a good question, because what I want to acknowledge is that in terms of misogyny and patriarchy, right, is that we are woven from patriarchy in so many ways. All of us, men and women, and that we have all been wounded in deep, deep ways by this way, the only way that we have, and that has shaped us in great ways and kind of created the shape of our bodies, created the shapes of our psyche. And so then when we talk about feminine and masculine, well, it's arising out of this like pretty embedded story. How do we extricate ourselves from that? Is it even possible? Is it possible to liberate our bodies from the stories they have taken in? Collectively, in the collective field, I mean, we're porous beings. We feel what's happening on this planet. We know it in our cells, right? Like, I have so many questions around that, but just to acknowledge, thank you for that question, and to acknowledge how we are embedded, how we have been written into this patriarchal story, and how do we, what's next? What's possible? It's a great question, and I'd love to hear from you.
Actually, because it was not sure that I'm be here or not. That's nice, but I'm here. So the question you are asking, it's absolutely relating to when yesterday night they asked me to maybe if what do you think, would you be part of the panel of Shakti, and do you have something to say about this? And then I say, to dance about this. And then immediately I was telling Zaya that in the academy where I was graduating, there is a repertoire. So we always believe that the creation of the world is related to dance, so it's an act of dancing. And nowadays, most of the academy or dance company, they keep in the repertoire only the Natesha Kautwam, which is a dance relating to the praising of the creation of the world through dance, creation and destruction, of course, but through dance regarding Shiva. But long back in the repertoire, there was a dance called Kali Kautwam, which was the same story. It was narrating the creation of the world through dance, but relating to Kali. So the Darpan Academy, I mean, I don't know if you heard, but the founder of Darpan Academy was Mrinalini Sarabhai, and she was a dancer, and she married to Vikram Sarabhai, who was a scientist. So their way of relating to each other was making the academy and was making the repertoire. So they decided to include in the repertoire of the performing group the Kali Natesha Kautwam. So showing that the creation can be referred to the Shiva, Kali, but again, if we talk about Shiva, in the name itself, there is Shiva, it's duality. So it's just a game for us to try to understand more and more. But for me, while I was learning the pieces, I don't know if maybe there's time to show a bit, and I was not practicing, so you will see also the fault, because there was no time to do this. But it was really interesting, because it's again, how do we relate to the Shakti or to Shiva? And it's basically the same. It's basically the same. It's just, of course, the choreography is different. What I felt is that one, the Kali, it's bringing the energy more close to the earth. It's something which is helping a lot to, it's starting actually by saying Kali was dancing fearless in the forest of where the dance was, where the creation of the world was started. And the second dance, the Nateshaka Uttam, is more intellectual, we can say. It's more about theater, but the story is the same, basically.
I want just to say something very brief about this. I think we don't have to lose ourselves in the illusion of this polarity, because actually, although our bodies are either female or male, our being is not. And it's not about like defending the feminine or against the masculine or anything like that. That's simply the game of duality, the beautiful game of duality, that is a representation of an inner movement that is happening in consciousness. But what we are is really the stillness of being. And we are able to welcome, witness and embody fully these two aspects of the divine. Then we see that from this piece that is not like the result of a resolution of a conflict, but a starting point, watching that game that can appear as a war or can appear as a dance, from stillness of being, is always possible in any moment. And from that point, you can embrace and embody and meet fully these two aspects of the divine. So what we see as a conflict on the representation of life is an opportunity and an invitation to meet ourselves deeply. And I think this is the key if you want to bring non-duality close to this subject.
My question arose from your passionate presentation, Vera, and pertains to what you have all just spoken to. In our world today, there are bloody atrocities, genocide, ongoing in more than a few places. These acts are planned and enacted largely by men. Is this violence an expression of Kali? Is Kali manifesting herself?
I mean, that's such a huge question. I mean, I think we all have different answers to that. You know, it depends. What is our relationship? Like, what is Kali, right? I mean, what is Kali? I have no idea. I have no idea, but I know that I can't answer that question. Huh? Oh, sorry. Like, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I mean, it's... Yes, she's that and everything else, you know, is kind of where I want to... what I want to say, but just to acknowledge that what you're saying, the immensity of what you're saying is actually what I... Yes, there's so much violence and so much pain. And I think, yes, perpetuated by men, but, you know, and women, like, against women, against men. I'm constantly being pulled back to you. I bet you have a lot to say about that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Kali is beyond, this is what Kali is and this is what Kali isn't. So I would say yes and, you know, everything. She's everything. She's, so.
More than a question, I would just to to share something, and I'm a bit nervous, but I would like to share that I feel really grateful that, for example, in my life now, I don't have this comfortable home or place or a yoga mat where I can like relax in this way. And I learned so much from this, because in some points I have been like in situations where there is no even shop nearby. And this has taught me something very, very special, like just to find this comfort with my naked feet on the stones, with my bones on the stones. And how to bleed my blood to the Mother Earth, how to give it to her. And without having anything to put in me or some things to make it more comfortable. And thanks to that, I learned that we do some strange thing. We try not to let go, like you were saying. We try to, how did you say it? Your resistance will not prevent it to happen. So we resist, we kind of resist to this bleed in our menstruation. We don't let it go. And I learned how to take a time to really let it go. So to connect with myself and say, now I will go to bleed and I will let this go. And since 3 years I do this, I don't put anything on me, and it just really teach me how to do this. Because you cannot resist it. And this is like falling in love, like you were saying, falling in love, but with earth. So you cannot resist it. You just take the time, woman, to go and let it go to the earth. It may seem not comfortable, but it's the most amazing, comfortable, and cozy feeling you can feel. And I would like to invite all of you to connect with this and enjoy it. And to all the men to also share that, speak with the woman. This is so beautiful. Just honor it. And thank you. I don't know if you...
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say just very briefly 2 words. You said you don't have a home or a comfort place to be. My love, is not true. You are watching that crisis from a very still place that is your home and is you. So it's about learning to embrace what you believe to be, all that feelings, all that thoughts, all that stories, all that pain, all the wounds, from that stillness of being that is the self. That is the essence of meditation. You are already home. Your home is embracing all of this. And you are learning to connect this with your body, with your heart, with your mind, and that's beautiful. But you're not lost. You're not a little bunch of bone and flesh and blood lost in a rotating planet of mud and water in the universe and everything is crazy. You're not. Your stillness, your peace. And I want to say, you say before war, you know, when I say it's not a war, what I mean is you can be at peace with your conflicts. That's what I meant. Okay? So you are watching already all that stuff, all that wars, all that conflict from a very still place that is total peace and true love. And it's all about recognizing this. And then this process unfolds by itself. You are already safe and free. Thank you.
I want to go back to the prior question about the violence in the world. I think if we don't take Kali inwardly, if we don't do the inner work of Kali, the cutting through our own illusions, then we will enact it in the world. So it's very different if you take Kali outwardly versus taking it inwardly. And it's the failure to do it inwardly that leads to the violence in the world.
Oh, amen. Amen. Are we at the end of our time? Well, thank you all so much. Thank you so much for that beautiful finale. That's the core. Thank you so much to do the work. And thank you each for being here and for your wisdom and your insight and your compassion. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.